The Illuminate Arts and Faith Conference in Chattanooga, Tennessee wants to help you find your tribe. Do you get way too excited about quoting Wendell Berry or C.S. Lewis in conversations with coworkers? Does your Spotify playlist include hymns, a little jazz, and a whole lot of Andrew Peterson? Join your tribe at Illuminate March 31 and April 1 for education and inspiration from speakers Russ Ramsey, Douglas McKelvey, John Hendricks, and others. Find a complete list of session topics and ticket information at southern.edu/illuminate.
In 2024, I set out to meet as many poets as I could and spend an hour with each one. I got more than I bargained for, more insight, more clarity, more hope. It's proved to be one of the richest highlights of my life. 17 writers, 17 deeply human conversations that made me sit up and pay attention. Franz Kafka once said, if the book we're reading doesn't wake us up with a blow to the head, what are we reading for? A book must be the axe for the frozen sea within us. And that's what I hope this new book will do. I hope it wakes us up, my friends. I hope these conversations will be the catalyst for something to be reawakened, re-enchanted, and reinvigorated. It's called An Axe for the Frozen Sea, Conversations with Poets About What Matters Most. I'm Ben Palpin, and I hope you'll come and listen in as I spend a little time with poets like Lucy Shaw, Malcolm Guite, Dana Gioia, and Lee Young Lee. Pull up a chair at the table as we dig into what it means to write well and to live well. An Axe for the Frozen Sea is now available from Rabbit Room Press. Visit the store at rabbitroom.com, or better yet, ask about it at your favorite bookseller.
So if you look at any sin and you pull back the curtain and you look underneath there, there's a natural God-given human desire that is seeking fulfillment in an independent way, trying to get that need met apart from God.
Welcome to the Habit Podcast, conversations with writers about writing. I'm Jonathan Rogers, your host. Ron Block is the banjo player of Alison Krauss and Union Station, and now he's an author. His new book is Abiding Dependence, Moment by Moment in the Love of God. I've known Ron for 10 years or more, and I've never known an artist who is so thoroughly committed to his craft without being driven, without finding his identity in his performance. In this episode of the Habit Podcast, Ron Block talks with me about the true source of identity, repentance without negative self-talk, and getting free of the anxiety and fear that eat up an artist's processing power. Ron Block, I'm so happy to have you on the Habit Podcast. You're one of the very first guests I had on this podcast a long time ago, and here you are back again.
I'm glad to be back.
I was so surprised to learn that my old friend Ron Block had written a book. I had no idea you were writing a book until I saw you announce that you have a book coming out that was going to release in a month from whatever time it was. That it was just funny to you had done all this. You were secretly off writing a book and not telling people about it.
It was one of my COVID projects.
Yeah. So this book is called Abiding Dependence, Living Moment by Moment in the Love of God. So tell me, so you said this was one of your COVID projects. Tell me about that. Tell me how this book came to be.
Well,
and what it's about, these kind of things.
Andrew Osenga was asked by Trillia Newbell, who is the acquisitions editor for Moody. And she asked him, who do you think should write a book? And Andrew Osenga said, Ron Block. Mm-hmm. And I'm really glad he did, because she got a hold of me.
Yeah,
we had a Zoom meeting and we talked about things, and then she showed me how to do a book proposal, and I sent in a bunch of stuff. And then it's all that kind of stuff that you have to do.
Yeah,
and then she wrote to me and said they accepted the book proposal, and so then I went upstairs and told Sandra, hey, I got the book proposal, and then internally I was like, oh no, now I got to write a book.
Yeah,
and I'd never organized my thoughts in that, to that extent. Mm-hmm. I've written lots of like one-off articles, or even a series of 3 posts that are on a the same topic, but I've never had to organize a book length thing. So the devotional idea was a really good idea, because you can be somewhat unrelated in some of them.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to follow completely a logical train of thought, like a book of theology, which I wouldn't write, because I'm not a trained theologian.
So this book is, I think, 40 meditations.
Yeah, 40. It's 40 days of just good things to think about, dwell on.
Can you be more specific? Good things to think about.
Yeah.
When you describe this book, when somebody, when you're giving the elevator pitch or whatever, how do you describe?
Well, essentially, let's see. Abiding dependence is sort of the centerpiece of what the book is about, and so I start with how Jesus had to live. And of course, at first, I emphasize that Jesus is God. He's the second person of the Trinity. I'm totally orthodox that way. But, as I have gone on through the years and looking at the life of Jesus, I realize he didn't live by his godhood. He wasn't like Tim the Enchanter in Monty Python, just, doing miracles, right? He wasn't like that. He had to depend on his Father, and he continually said, the Father in me does the works. I do as I see my Father doing. Mm-hmm. And so he had to depend on his Father inside of him to give him the words to say, what he was supposed to do, where he was supposed to go. So he had to live exactly as we are supposed to live. We're supposed to be living with that kind of inner direction of the Spirit. And so Jesus is the model of that. And then he goes on to say, I'm the vine, you are the branches. Apart from me, he says, apart from me, you can do nothing. He doesn't say, apart from me, you can do some stuff, and then I'll help you with the big stuff. It's like, apart from me, you can do nothing. So the essence of abiding dependence, and that's the best phrase I could find to describe how he lived. He was abiding in the Father, and the Father was in him, and he was depending on the Father for everything.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
No, and of course, then it just translates to how we're supposed to be living.
Mm-hmm. I think an interesting idea that recurs to this book is the idea of identity, and the idea that we have all these false ways of finding, our sense of self, and that our true, authentic self, we connect with that by connecting with God, living out of that, living from the indwelling Spirit.
Yeah.
And this is a topic that I've heard you talk about many times before. I'd love to hear you talk about it a little bit more. I mean, the idea of identity, the authentic self. Why is it important that we find our authentic self, and how is it that you find your authentic self not by looking to another being, that is, the triune God?
Right. Well, because he's the only. Well, if you think of any other identity source, let's say, like I did it when I was young with music. Mm-hmm. I was, had several things happen between the age of, say 5 years old and 13 years old that were really what I call jagged events. They were really deep, hard, heavy things, and they kind of kicked my self-worth and security out from under me. So I went into my teens without any real sense of security. Well, right then I started playing music. And even though I was a Christian, I had no idea where I was supposed to get my self-worth. Hadn't even asked those questions. You're just sort of, getting it from wherever. So I began to play music. And as I got better at playing music, my sense of self-worth when I would play well was, I would feel good, And so then as I got out and playing in bands and things, and then I played well, plus my playing did things for people, like it moved them and made them feel things, then that helped my self-worth as well. But the problem is what goes up must come down. With a fluctuating source, it's based on your behavior. So if I play well, I feel good. And if I play badly, I feel bad. And so I joined Allison's band, and they were really glad to have me, and it made me feel great. Yeah. And then, in the next couple of years of recording and making, playing shows, I ended up, kind of mentally or spiritually, whatever, crashing internally because it started not to work.
Yeah.
My worth was going down, not up. What goes up must come down. So the world sources, no matter what it is, I just give my example as an example. You can do the same thing with being a writer or even being a mother or father or whatever. You can get your self-worth from anything, your job, your possessions, your cars, whatever. It's only the world sources are going to fluctuate, and God is the only unchanging source of identity. So he doesn't fluctuate. His view of us is solid, and it stays exactly what it is. We're sons and daughters. We're holy. We're dearly loved. We're accepted in the beloved. So he sees us as acceptable and his sons and daughters. And that's the only place that I've found where I can, when events or things kind of throw me sideways, that's the only place I can go. Or is to just go to God and go, who am I? Who am I? And he'll tell you who you are.
Yeah. One of the things that I mentioned identity is I've heard you talk about identity a lot before. I've also one of the things that I appreciate about the way you talk about the world is these spiritual insights. You're always interested in conveying those into how we live, in the world the physical world we inhabit, right? These spiritual insights, you're always finding ways to make that. I mean, and even something like practicing guitar, is these spiritual insights that you talk about for you are very relevant even to guitar practice.
Yeah, because I think a lot of this stuff for me just simply comes out of my need. Like, I want to get better as a musician. I'm not finished. I feel like I'm just like understanding certain things about music now that I didn't understand before, and I want to keep getting better. So in order to do that, I have to have some basis for believing that I can get better at my age, right? So like, in sports and in music, sports people, high-level sports people and high-level music people already use these principles. I mean, it doesn't mean that they're Christians or whatever, but the principles of really believing you can do something and that it's possible to you. It's a form of faith, right? So, and we live by that natural faith kind of every day. We, like if I sit in this chair, I wanted to sit down. And secondly, I have to believe that the chair is going to hold me.
Yeah.
And then when I sit in the chair, that's having faith. So a belief is not the same as having faith, right? I can have a belief that the chair will hold me and not sit in it. That's what I'm saying. Okay. So I can intellectually assent to the idea that the chair will hold me and then not sit in it. But if I have faith in the chair, I'm going to sit in the chair. So the sports people and music, high level music people, they have a kind of faith that when they pick up their instrument or they work on their vocals or whatever, write a song, they have a belief that there's going to be a good result. And if there doesn't happen to be a good result that day, they believe the next day there's going to be a good result. And on and on and on. They just keep on believing. And that belief ends up, in a way, creating the reality they experience. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I can't think what my follow-up question to that is.
Well, let me just continue let me use myself as an example. probably a couple of years, 3 years ago, I started going, well, I want to learn to flat pick a lot faster on the guitar, because I've always been in Allison's band. I play the kind of slow, pretty guitar, and then banjo on the medium tempo or faster songs. So I haven't worked on my flat picking, which is sort of like playing, faster, faster lines and things. So I haven't worked on that. But what it's taken for me has been a digging at, old beliefs. So I had to believe that I could get better. And for me, what that means as a Christian, I go, well, in Christ, I have everything I need for life and godliness. That's what Peter says. And in fact, Peter goes on to say, we're partakers of the divine nature. So we actually feed and sustain ourselves on the God of all possibilities. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when I sit down to practice, with that attitude. I have everything I need for life, which is sitting here practicing, and godliness, which is, dealing with other people and dealing with God in a way that is righteous. I have everything I need inside me to do that. So all this stuff ends up applying to playing my instruments, right? Does that make sense?
Yes. Here's my question.
Puzzled. You look a little puzzled.
Yeah, but the question I wanted to ask was, how is this framing different from a straight up new agey, if I put my desires out into the universe responds, that kind of stuff?
Well, I mean, I won't say there's a truth to that, but I will say there are results to that sometimes, because now, even if let's say somebody goes to let's say a man is an introvert, and his wife says, let's go to this party, and he goes, I don't want to go to the party, people don't like me. Okay, and then she drags him to the party, and then he attempts to engage people, but his responses are kind of weird because he has the belief people don't like me. And then he goes away from the party telling her, see, people don't like me. So his belief was proved out in his actions, and then people responded to his actions. And then those actions caused them to be somewhat repelled. Right? And then he goes home with the belief reinforced. Yeah. Now the converse is also true. If that same guy said, well, people don't like me, and his wife said, well, listen, you believe that, but why don't you try to change your belief and go there with the attitude, how about you try to like other people and go there just trying to like them, and don't worry about yourself being liked. So that very attitude opens up, it doesn't matter Christian or non-Christian. Right. That very attitude opens up the soul and opens up the personhood to where people see you engage with a wholehearted acceptance of them. Yeah. And then they automatically like you. And then that guy would go home going, man, I had a great time, and it seemed like people really like me. Well, it's because he got his mind off of himself and whether or not people like him. So so it's a form of faith is what I'm getting at. So even when you talk about the new agey stuff, there is truth to that, and nobody would believe it if there wasn't truth in it. And what happened in the 80s, I grew up largely in the 80s, and we had all the new agey books and new age bookstores and all that stuff. And they were all saying, you are Christ, and, all the, we are Christ and all this stuff. Well, Christians, because of that, reacted. And then anyone talking about Christ in you was a new ager. Well, I'm sorry, that makes Paul a new ager. Paul, right? We do have the truth, and the truth can be distorted. Yeah. We do have the truth. The truth can be distorted. So in and of ourselves, our human capabilities, apart from Christ, we can do nothing of any lasting eternal value. Yeah. So all this stuff that I write about in the book, it really does. It applies to parenting. It applies to playing guitar. It applies to going to work and dealing with people at work. It literally applies to everything, because Christ in us is the foundational thing to get in touch with, to have a stable sense of security, identity, and worth and meaning.
Yeah.
And then all of our activities come out from that hub of Christ in us.
Yeah.
All of our activities of like, I'm going to practice my guitar now. Well, do I have what it takes? Well, yeah, God said I do, because Christ lives in me. Oh, I'm going to go to this party now and I don't feel like going, but Lord, I want you to live through me as if it were me living, but it's really going to be you. So I'm going to trust you that you're going to love people through me. I'm going to feel your love coming through me to other people. So that it applies to going to a party or a gathering. It applies to going to work, or however you want to apply it.
Yeah. Your talk about the man going to the party and being absorbed, self-absorbed, really reminds me of something you wrote in your book. Anxiety and fear eat up processing power and get us self-focused self-focused.
Right. Yeah.
And I like that language of eating up processing power.
It does. It's like the RAM in a computer. If you got too many apps open, then it slows everything down. It's the same. It's exactly the same when I practice guitar. If I don't have a full-hearted sense of assurance of like, this is going to be awesome, I'm going to practice, I'm going to get better today, I'm going to see myself get better. If I don't have that and I go, well, I guess I'll practice, I'm just not doing very good lately. Well, that's going to be a drag on my focus. So when I'm playing, I won't have as much processing power to actually sit there and go, okay, what's actually happening when I can't do that lick? When I mess that up every time, what is actually happening? Let me slow down and figure that out. Oh, it's my third finger is coming up too high. So you won't be able to analyze things properly if your processing power is eaten up by self-absorption. So, was it Flannery O'Connor said, or it was C.S. Lewis, one of them, that humility is a kind of self-forgetfulness. Yeah. So it's the opposite of being self-absorbed. And so when you approach an activity like playing guitar or recording or singing or writing, whatever, the more absorbed you can be in the activity from a place of faith that this is going to be awesome. It might be hard in spots, but the end result's going to be great. If you have that faith attitude and you get your mind off of what other people are going to think about it, or whether you have the sufficiency to do it, get your mind off that stuff and onto the activity, it's much more productive.
Yeah, that self-forgetfulness is so valuable when you can get it. It's hard to get there, and it's hard to be absorbed in the activity instead of absorbed with yourself.
It is, and honestly, when I was growing up in the church, there was such an emphasis on we're horrible, filthy, rotten sinners, and we're sinners, and we're sinners. We're sinners saved by grace, and so the message was you're a horrible sinner, and that's basically all you're ever going to be until you die. And then Jesus is going to suddenly transform you, and then you're not going to sin anymore. But really what the gospel is, it's not just for someday. The gospel is for right now. So in Christ, we died on the cross and we were resurrected as new creations, is what Paul says. If any man is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has gone, the new has come. So that means I don't have to focus on myself as a sinner. I'm such a sinner.
Or as anything else.
But like it's the same thing. I talked about this before probably, but it's the same principle as if when I was going on stage with Allison, if every time I was going on stage in the hour beforehand, I'd go, man, I'm such a horrible musician. Nobody's going to like my playing. I'm going to make so many mistakes. Well, guess what's going to happen? That thing is going to come to pass because I'm speaking that out with my mouth. And then I'm going to get on stage and be self-conscious and self-absorbed and nervous. Yeah. But if I flip my thinking to this is going to be amazing. Thank you, Lord, that I get to be here and play for these people. Thank you that you've schooled me and I've practiced and I've worked on this. And this is exactly where I'm supposed to be because you want to live through me and play music. Right? That's a different attitude than I'm a horrible, filthy, rotten sinner. I've just got to try to do the best I can. And someday I'm going to die and go to heaven. That's not the God. I got to the place in the 90s where I just said to the Lord, I said, if you don't change me, forget it. Forget the whole deal. I'll go be a Buddhist or something. If I don't experience transformation, I need transformation and not just to stay the same my whole life.
Yeah.
So that's when I began to dig into all the identity stuff and began to figure out that what Paul and Jesus and John say about us is really the direct opposite of what a lot of teaching I had growing up said about me. Rather than emphasizing constantly, you're a sinner, you're a sinner, you're a sinner, they emphasize you're the light of the world.
Yeah.
You're children of God.
I think it's helpful to acknowledge, I'm a sinner, but that's also about one of the least interesting things about me.
Yeah, it is. It's totally not interesting, and it's non-productive to focus on it. It's absolutely non-productive, because it's an identity tag. It's an identity tag. So I don't see any problem with going, sometimes I sin. I forget that Christ lives in me, and I say something snarky or I do something that's wrong. And yes, that happens. I forget that Christ lives in me. I forget to abide. Mm-hmm. I forget to depend. And then I sin. And of course, the way out of that is just simply to confess it and go right back to abiding, and then apologize to whoever you need to apologize to. Mm-hmm. And then you get back walking again. And it's a practice of turning. And the word is, I guess it's pronounced metanoia, which is the turning. You're turning from one thing to another thing. So you're turning away from your sin, or it's really at the essence, sin is independence. It's trying to walk independently of God and not seeing that you are totally dependent on him. Mm. So the sinner mindset, to live in the sinner mindset, is to continually be grabbed and captivated by temptation. Mm. Because if I'm tempted and I go, well, I'm a horrible sinner, this just, I'm tempted, so I'm a horrible, rotten sinner. So I guess I got to do this because I'm a sinner. And it's just not true. It's a thought. A temptation is just a thought that comes through your head. And when we think we have to fight against those thoughts independently, and we're not looking at Christ, well, of course we're going to do stuff we shouldn't do. Mm. Right?
Yeah. You quote this. If you don't mind, I'm going to read a little passage that I really appreciated from your book that involves kind of a twofer: a quote from C.S. Lewis and a quote from George MacDonald. You couldn't fit in Tolkien in there.
Next time.
And again, the context here is you're talking about the idea of light that Jesus talks about as being the light of the world, these kind of things. He said, if light lessens in a room, colors and details fade. As the darkness thickens, forms begin to vanish, and when the light is gone, we see nothing. In total darkness, every view looks the same: up, down, sides, front, back. Darkness obscures all difference, all color, all detail, all beauty. And C.S. Lewis wrote, how monotonously alike all the great tyrants and conquerors have been, how gloriously different all the saints. Which sounds like something Chesterton would have said.
Yeah.
That sounds more Chestertonian than
it does.
Is that from Mere Christianity? Do you remember?
Yeah. Yep.
And so you say when we try to achieve good ends, I think I'm somehow typing this wrong. Basically, when we try to reach good ends using the wrong means, habit lowers the light, blinds us, then binds us.
Yeah,
the darkness closes in.
Right.
And I love this from George MacDonald. For all wickedness tends to destroy individuality, and declining natures assimilate
as they sink. Yeah.
That is so good. And
it is good.
And so, again, the question of getting in touch with my authentic self is a matter of living in the light and not, and not being what's sort of amalgamated with where everything starts to look the same, but our own uniqueness and originality.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you think about all the tyrants, like Lewis said, you think about, Saddam Hussein and Mussolini and all those guys, they're all the same person.
Mm-hmm.
They're just stomping around angry, and it's the same. It's all the same person. There's no colors and details of the personality.
Yeah.
So, but I think at the root of that, what I was saying in that chapter on, light and seeing and darkness, at the root of any sin, let's just talk about that. At the root of any temptation, let's say, there's a need that we have that is a valid human need.
Mm-hmm.
At the root of any temptation, there's a need. So even if that need, the temptation twists the need at the root of it, like let's say I gave the example, I think of, an addict, a drug addict.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, at some point that person went off the rails because they wanted to change how they felt about themselves, and they didn't like how they felt, and they didn't like themselves. Right. So they were reaching for something that would deaden that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Not true in all cases, probably, but let's just use that example. Yes. So we have a need to like ourselves. Yeah. We have a need to feel that we're worth something. We have a need to have a sense of security and stability, and that life is worth living. Well, some people end up trying to find that through drugs, that to find a sense of meaning and purpose. Right. Mm-hmm. So at the root, and then I give another example, the narcissist, ends up controlling other people because they feel they're deep down. The narcissist is terrified that life is not in their control. I've watched a lot of stuff on narcissism, and they feel life is not in their control, and they're terrified, and so they have to manipulate and feel that they're in control over other people. Mm-hmm. So, but that need to feel like we're in control of our lives is not a sin. It's simply like, that's just a natural human desire, right? Mm-hmm. So if you look at any sin and you pull back the curtain and you look underneath there, there's a natural God-given human desire that is seeking fulfillment in an independent way, trying to get that need met apart from God.
Mm-hmm.
Does it make sense?
Sure.
So we not only try to get our identity and worth and meaning from good things like being, getting higher and higher in a company, or becoming a better and better musician, or writing new books, whatever. We not only do, or some people by being very religious and doing lots of good works and all that kind of stuff, which nothing wrong with any of those things, but some people are trying to find identity and worth and meaning in bad things, like being a thief or drugs, or you name it, like whatever. Everyone's trying to find these things, but the problem is they're in the wrong tree.
Yeah.
The tree of the knowledge of good and evil, it's good and evil. So you can go to the good side and climb and be the highest, most respected religious person on the planet and not know Christ at all.
Yeah, because you're still in the wrong. Yeah,
you're in the wrong tree. You're in the wrong tree. Good side or bad side, it's the wrong tree. So that's what I'm saying. Like the tree of life is the connection to God and Christ and the Holy Spirit as your absolute rock bottom sense of worth, security, and meaning. Yeah. That's it. That's really what it comes down to. And that's really the message of the book it's my hope that people through reading it people who aren't as aware of that would become aware of, like, hey, I need this. I need, because it's my book is the devotional is just a pointer is all it is. It's not some great theological work. I'm just saying it's over there. It's right here. Look at this. Look at Christ. Look at how he lived. This is what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be living from that sense of fullness and sufficiency.
Yeah.
And not from, I'm a horrible, filthy, rotten sinner, and hanging our head every day and being self-conscious and self-absorbed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can we talk about rest for a minute?
Yeah.
you talk. There's one of your meditations is on, involves rest. It's actually, I think it's a meditation. The title is about weakness, but you end up talking about rest.
Yeah.
And you say rest is not passivity.
Right.
And I want to hear more about that. I think I know a little bit about your commitment to practice. You work really hard at your craft. That doesn't look restful.
Right.
From where I sit, I think about you getting up and, picking a banjo or a guitar for hours.
Yeah.
And working really hard at it. That doesn't sound restful to me. So talk to me about that.
So if okay, so let's say I have $50 in the bank.
Okay.
And I need to buy $100 worth of groceries. Right. Mm-hmm. So I go to the grocery store and I've only got $50, but I need $100 worth of groceries. Nice. So I buy from Strain because I keep going, I need that, but I can't. I guess I'll get this instead. Which one do I get? So there's all these questions and struggle and strife because I don't have the resources to meet the need. Mm-hmm. Right. But if I go to the grocery store with $1,000 in the bank mm-hmm. and I need to buy $100 of groceries, I buy from Rest mm-hmm. because I just buy what I need.
Yeah.
So in practicing, if I would come downstairs with an attitude of like, I just need to get better. I'm just not good enough. And, I don't know, I've been working so hard and I'm just not getting any better and I don't know why. And I guess, so-and-so was right. I'm not talented. Right. So then I go to practice from Strain because I don't have the inner resources to meet the need. The need is to get better and I don't have the inner resources to do that. So I lose hope. Mm-hmm. And so I don't have the necessary fuel to continue practicing. So then I get frustrated and I put the guitar down and I go upstairs and, watch Netflix or whatever. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And that happens all the time to musicians. I know lots of musicians that not necessarily pro level musicians, but musicians that do that. They have that sense of like, well, I guess I'm just not as talented, and they believe these things. So they operate from Strain mm-hmm. and that makes guitar playing unpleasant. It does. It's like, it might be fun for a little bit and you play the few little things that but then when it comes to learning new things, you don't know how and you don't feel you can. Mm-hmm. So that's operating from Strain. But when I come downstairs to practice, I get my guitar out with kind of an eagerness because I go, I can't wait to get to where I'm warmed up. It takes me about 15 minutes where I'm, really paying attention to my technique. And then I warm up and then it feels awesome. I go, this is great. Now I can learn all kinds of stuff. So I'm operating more and more from a sense of rest. And so that sense of rest gives me the faith and hope, hope is just expectation of future good. Mm-hmm. Right. So as I'm practicing, I have an expectation of like, man, the next year or two is going to be killer because I'm getting better and better. And I'm going to be able to make better music, go out and play with more people and have much more fun because I'm getting better. So there's this sense of expectation of future good. That's hope. Mm. So the hope drives my practicing. The hope drives my practicing and fuels the doing. So the doing doesn't even feel like work. Mm-hmm. It's passion, right?
Yeah. And that's possible because we're coming from a place of rest, not strain and not.
Yeah. From a place of really believing that what I am doing will affect change.
Yeah.
And will actually, have beneficial, things in my future. It'll bring benefit.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So tell me about, when you said you've never written a book before. You've written some, you've written shorter things here and there, but you're launching into a new, a new art form when you wrote this book. Can you tell me that's a little bit, seems to me that's a little bit different from I've been doing, music, guitar for decades, and you've gotten used to the idea of good things that happen when you play. Mm-hmm. Was it harder to enter into the idea that as I sit down and write and discipline myself in this way, good things are going to happen?
Yeah, for me, it's like songwriting. I've written a lot of songs Allison has done, and I've written a lot for my own records, but like, I've never been a songwriter. I've always been a player and a harmony singer. Mm-hmm. And so it's the same thing as with songwriting. I've written songs when the need arises, mm-hmm. but the problem is, without the discipline of writing songs, if a need arises and that need contains a lot of pressure, mm-hmm. like, oh, I got to write this song. Well, once that pressure starts, then you lose the childlike aspect of play. Mm-hmm. And then you're no longer playing with sonic material. You're actually going, okay, this has got to be good. Mm-hmm. And the minute you do that, you're self-conscious and self-absorbed, and you lost the humility of the child trying to create.
Yeah.
Right. So it was the same. It was the same with the book. And it's one of the reasons I procrastinated early on. I've written tons of just articles and blog posts and stuff like that. And sometimes I go through and edit, but sometimes I'm not super careful in going, okay, I said this already. And, I just kind of toss it out there. But it's been beneficial for me to do that and do it like a child and not worry about it being perfect.
Yeah.
So writing a book, though, is, you have to think about, what you're saying, especially to Christians, because, well, for example, early on, I was talking about some of this stuff to Trillia, and she mentioned, she said, I told her about what the chapters were going to be about, and she goes, but you do believe Jesus was God, right? Hmm. And all of a sudden I went, okay, I got to emphasize that. Mm-hmm. Right. But in my blindness, I would not have emphasized that as much, because I just assumed on the part of the reader mm-hmm. that they would know that, but they would assume that I didn't believe that.
Yeah.
So Trillia basically saved me from having however many people write to me saying you're not a Christian because you don't believe Jesus was God. Right. Yeah. So I start out the first chapter with that. So I procrastinated a lot because of the sense of pressure. Once I got the book deal, that's what I meant earlier on, where I was like, oh no, I got to write a book now.
Yeah.
But
I think it's quite as playful when there's a book contract.
Yeah, it's a book contract, and it's like there's an expectation and there's a deadline.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets less like a child playing, and all of a sudden I got to please people. Mm-hmm. And that's where the pressure comes from. So yes, it was very different writing a book than, playing my guitar. It really, or playing my banjo. It's very, very different. But as I went along, I began to enter into the spirit of sort of playing with ideas mm-hmm. and words. And I would just sort of write and see what came out. And sometimes it was crap. and then I just kept those on my hard drive or deleted them or whatever. Yeah. And then went on to the next thing the next day, but that's that thing of persevering and hope. Like the hope gives you perseverance. So I had a bad day or two bad days, and then I just keep doing it and then go, well, there's good thoughts are going to come. You just, you keep going and you don't stop.
Yeah, man. A bad day of writing doesn't mean you're a bad writer.
Right. It's I used to. Our daughter would be playing piano upstairs. She was probably about 15. She'd be practicing piano, some ragtime piece or something. And I'd stick my hand in and go, "Hey, Erica," and she'd stop. She'd go, "Yeah, Dad." I go, "Erica, just remember, when you make a mistake, it means you're a bad person." And she'd go, "Thanks, Dad. Thanks for that advice, Dad." It was making fun of the whole idea that you get your identity from it.
Yeah. All right, we're about to run out of time, but I do want to hear from you. Who are the writers who make you want to write?
Oh, C.S. Lewis is huge. Yeah. I love his conversational kind of tone. When he wrote those books, all Mere Christianity, even Screwtape Letters and all that, even the fiction stuff, it's this very easy conversational kind of writing that's very engaging. So I love Lewis. Of course, MacDonald is more dense, both in his writing style and sometimes not in a great way, because sometimes he goes on. Sometimes I go, you could have used an editor. But there's something that comes through MacDonald that does not come through any other writer. Yeah. There is something of the Spirit of God that comes through that guy's writing, and the sort of deep archetypal images come through his writing that are will really affect you in almost a very mysterious way. Yeah. I was going to say a mystical way, but that word has been, misused so much, but sure. Like in a very mysterious way, he affects you at a root level. So I love MacDonald, Tolkien, of course. And then also, an influence on this book is like Andrew Murray and writers like that. G. Campbell Morgan, A.W. Tozer, and Major Ian Thomas, all these, Christian writers that basically wrote and kept talking about Christ in you as the source of, all of everything we're looking for.
Yeah. All right, Ron. Well, thank you. Thank you for writing this book. Thank you for being here. And I hope lots of people read it and benefit from it.
I hope so too.
See you soon.
Take care.
The Habit Podcast is brought to you by The Rabbit Room, where art nourishes community and community nourishes art. To check out more of our podcasts, visit rabbitroom.com/podcast. Our work at The Rabbit Room would be impossible without the generous support of our membership. If you'd like to learn more about membership at The Rabbit Room, visit rabbitroom.com/member. And thanks for listening.
The Habit membership is a library of resources for writers by me, Jonathan Rogers. More importantly, The Habit is a hub of community where like-minded writers gather to discuss their work and give each other a little more courage. Find out more at thehabit.co.
If you've enjoyed this podcast episode, consider joining the Rabbit Room membership. Your membership helps sustain this community, funding everything from publishing and podcasts and theater productions to events and programs that support artists who create with a Christ-centered vision. We'd love to have you on board. Learn more at rabbitroom.com/member.